to the VIP Lounge. Please welcome to the stage Sarah and Courtney from Dangerous Games Podcast.
Hell yeah.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first live episode we have ever done of
Correct.
Dangerous Games Podcast. And
Together in the same,
State?
area.
State, part of the country.
I mean, we're like feet from each other.
This is crazy.
We're miles apart.
Yeah, I'm sitting in my office, and she's sitting
In the
her,
dark.
in
I
her
mean,
scary basement where bears come and attack her in
first
the
off,
middle.
that's not even cool.
So I am Courtney. I am with Reckless Cards. You may know me from Hobby Night School and Too Thick Pod. This is my beautiful,
Oh,
stunning,
Lord. Here we go.
gorgeous, perfect, light of my life, best of my friends, Sarah, the original Mrs. Breaker, Mrs. Squirts, and you would know her from being just like the best breaker ever.
Well, I appreciate that. And just so everybody knows, that's what she says every time we start these.
Because every day it's true. It's truer than the last
Well,
time.
I appreciate you, and you know what? Wouldn't be here without you. And
I did drag you kicking and screaming into
you
this.
did, in more ways than one. But we are here, and we've been rolling. I think, what are we at now? Is this our 10th?
No, 15. This is going to be episode 15 when we release it.
I don't know.
on
We've
our-
been just popping out so many of them, and we do so many of them because we do 2 a night.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So this is our first one doing a live one. It's going to be a little longer because, we have time to fill. And
yes.
we're going to get into it. We had a different plan for tonight, but we thought since, we were at the Women in the Hobby booth today, we are women in the hobby, it made sense when we were together to do a big case.
Yes.
And do one that everybody knows and do a female athlete.
a big case that we can fit in 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So today we are going to be doing the case of Tanya Harding.
Good old Portland girl.
Yep. And the crime actually happened in Detroit, so it kind of it's
like
serendipitous.
we're
both
supposed
of
to
us.
be here.
Yeah. So it was January 6th, 1994 at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships in Detroit, Michigan. The competition was fierce, but little did anyone know that a dark and shocking plot was unfolding behind the scenes. Nancy Kerrigan, an immensely talented figure skater and a top contender for the Winter Olympics, was about to take the ice for her practice session. But as she stepped out, an assailant struck her knee with a collapsible baton, leaving her injured and in pain. The chilling, "Why me? Why?" moment captured on camera would become a haunting image etched in figure skating history. Shockingly, as the investigation unraveled, the spotlight turned to Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan's main competitor. Harding was a formidable athlete known for her incredible jumping ability, particularly her triple axel. She was the first female athlete to ever successfully complete a triple axel.
I think that's crazy if you think about it in the perspective of having to lift yourself off that ice and to do that and to execute something so crazy and
It's
to be the
true.
only one to do it. I mean, it kind of puts you at a bar that nobody else can touch.
Which is wild that she was so poorly viewed in this space and in this sport due to the nature of her physical appearance. She didn't have that willowy, tall, lanky frame. They wanted their figure skaters
The
to
dancer
look,
body.
yes, like a prima ballerina. And
Yep.
she was shorter, she was thicker built, and thicker. She weighed maybe 120 pounds soaking wet, but she was solid, muscular
Right.
frame.
You have to be in order to get off the ground
to
like
do
that.
the type of athletic
Correct.
feats that she was doing, you had to be physically
Yes.
built like that. But she was penalized for it because she didn't look and fit into the mold that they were looking for. So Tanya Harding was born in 1970 in November on the 12th, which is also my daughter's birthday, which is wild. That's Scorpio energy. They're just crazy.
This just brings us way too
I know
much
it's
together.
too much. So in Portland, to Lavana Golden and Al Harding, her child was marked by challenging and tumultuous environment filled with financial difficulties and
Yeah.
family hardships. Her family was very poor,
Yeah,
and her mother was an alcoholic, and her father just could not hold a job.
I know. I think that's. Wasn't he didn't he work at some type of he would jump. He would jump from job to job,
he
and
never
get kind of bored of it and then be done with it.
or he would get in trouble, and he just wasn't like a hanger-arounder kind of guy. Lavona was tough and demanding, which is like an understatement. She was a horrible person.
Oh, yes.
But she recognized her daughter's talent for figure skating from an early age. Lavona was a chain smoker and a drunk, and often used harsh and abusive words towards Tanya and physical violence. She played a crucial role in her daughter's skating development, but she wasn't a positive force in Tanya's life. At the age of 3, Tanya was enrolled in skating lessons, 3 years old.
And I think that was at the Lloyd Center.
Yes.
In Portland.
It was. Her raw talent and determination were noticeable, even though her family really struggled to afford the high costs associated with figure skating. And as we get into this, you'll see the difference between, like, Nancy Kerrigan. I think people viewed her as being this wealthy person, and her family was actually very, like, middle class too, and they couldn't afford the high costs. Her parents, however, sacrificed a lot to make her able to afford what she needed, and her beauty and her, like, very traditional girl next door prima ballerina looks got her a lot of sponsorships and just advertising deals, things that Tanya wasn't getting. So Nancy naturally, like, moved apart from Tanya, I think, financially.
Do you think that a lot of it had to do with their upcoming, though? For Tanya being, feeling more reserved because of the abuse at home, because of the unstableness at home. Do you think possibly, like, she didn't put herself out there to be a Nancy because...
Well, I think she wanted to be a Nancy. I think she didn't understand. She would come, she'd have her makeup done and her hair done, but she did it in a way that was looked at as rough and not, elegant. And she thought she looked beautiful, but she just wasn't fitting into what they wanted her, the aesthetic that they were looking for.
Is this about the time that figure skating started picking up? I feel like, I don't know how far back figure skating...
I feel like the whole thing with Tanya, well, you had all of that. You had... the figure skating was the Olympics in, like, the 90s with the female athletes. Look at the female gymnasts, all of that was going on. There was a lot more focus on this. It was a lot of, like, empowerment.
A lot more eyes on the...
And when I say empowerment, I mean it in a way where women were being seen as these, like, amazing athletes, but still held to different standards than their male counterparts. Like, you don't care what a male athlete looks like if he's out there doing it. Where these women not only had to be athletic, they had to look a certain way and fit into a certain aesthetic, which was rough and hard. And Tanya, try as she might, couldn't do it. And you have Nancy Kerrigan getting Vera Wang dresses, and you have Tanya Harding's mom sewing hers up and sewing them in ways where people found them to be gaudy or classless. Like, there's a very famous one of her in, like, a purple one where they use, like, skin color down the middle, and it looks like it's low cut to her belly button, but it isn't. And she got judged very unfairly on that. So as she just continued to get the short end of the stick. She had to start working at the mall, where in the Lloyd Center, at the pretzel shop, to help.
Probably Auntie Annie's.
Yeah. No, it was like a different, like, off-brand one. Gotcha. I can't remember the name of it. I looked for it. I couldn't write it down. But she was doing it on her own. Her mom would pay for ice time for her, and then when she was a little girl, her mom would be like, you can't get off the ice, to the point of, like, she would have to go to the bathroom and she'd, like, wet herself on the ice because Lavona would not let her get off the ice. This child was abused forever. And
it's not even just necessarily that's a psychological abuse at that point too, because there's obviously the physical, but the psychological is definitely there, which I think could help better understand why she became the person she did later on.
I think a lot of her upbringing and her life, and then her relationship with Jeff Gillooly, and her stepbrother, all kind of culminated into what she became. So let's go a little bit forward to when she met Jeff. Okay. So actually, the night of her first date with Jeff, her stepbrother attacked her and SA'd her. Yeah. And he was arrested for that. Right. And she was getting ready for her first date with Jeff. and he came home and chased her around the house, attacked her.
And
He
did the
ended
same
up
thing.
getting arrested for this.
Yes.
And was sentenced to jail. And her mother's response to this was, Tanya lies. I could see him trying to kiss her, but Tanya lies. So when you're going through all of this and everyone in your life that's supposed to love you either harms you or doesn't believe you when you say you're harmed,
Right.
I imagine that can be really detrimental.
You suppress yourself. You can't open up. Who do you talk to at that
No,
point?
yeah, and like we talked about, there wasn't a lot of resources for
Right.
people at this time. So, she's going through this basically alone. And then enter Jeff Gillooly. So Jeff Gillooly was older than her. He also worked at the mall. He was into the whole figure skating thing. And, Tanya was very appealing to him. They had a complex and tumultuous relationship that began during their teen years. They met through mutual involvement in figure skating. Obviously, the couple got married in 1990. And while their union started out hopeful, I think Tanya really just wanted to get out of her house. And Jeff was like that, escape. But it turned out that Jeff just wasn't that great. He was also one that bounced around from job to job, so she might be used to that from her dad, and that seems more normal. He looked at her kind of like a meal ticket. He was constantly pressuring her to do better. On 2 separate occasions, she filed for restraining orders against him. She maintains that she stayed with him because the skating federation looked down on divorce.
Gotcha.
They wanted their girls to be pure, beautiful, angelic. And the fact that she was married was already a mark against her because it gives away that virginal, perfect beauty thing because
Right.
she's married.
Right.
And so you're certainly not getting divorced.
Right.
So and it was an uphill battle she was already facing with discrimination about her background. She felt trapped in this relationship. Skating judges didn't want their skaters married, and they certainly didn't want them divorced. So she also later on would say that Jeff had essayed her during their relationship. He would force himself on her, and she just, she was abused every second of every day, all the time. And so I want to talk just a little bit about Nancy, because I think that talking about what she went through growing up too is important before we get into the actual crime. Nancy's childhood was marked by her early passion for figure skating and the unwavering support of her family. So we talked about how society kind of pitted these girls against each other,
Right.
and they weren't maybe necessarily adversaries. They had a lot in common. They could have been friends, but society told them that they were competitors. They were enemies. They needed to fight against each other rather than build each other up. So her home life was a stark contrast to Tanya's. Her dad would drive the Zamboni. Her mother was blind and was a homemaker.
Right.
She was really encouraged by them, Daniel and Brenda Carrick, and she began figure skating lessons when she was 6. So 3 years after, Tanya had been skating, her talent and dedication quickly became evident, and she progressed rapidly under the guidance of her first coach, Teresa Martin. Nancy's family made significant sacrifices to nurture her burgeoning talent. And we talked about this before, too, that potentially all the sacrifices that the family made for Nancy, her brother, might have been suffering. And we also
Right.
talk about the perception of society is greater than the reality of what's going on. Everyone perceived Tanya's family as being trashy and bad, and they perceived Nancy's family as being this golden, beautiful family, and everybody got along.
But as an outsider looking in, did you feel that way? Or do you feel like maybe they were the same? Do you think that maybe there's a lot of lines that could have been the same? But
Maybe, but I was in 4th grade when all of this happened, and I remember very distinctly thinking that Nancy was basically a princess,
okay.
and that Tanya was like an evil stepsister
Stepchild, yeah.
who came in and was jealous of her and attacked her because she was jealous because she's a better skater and she's prettier. Arguably, Tanya was the better skater.
Correct.
She was more athletic. She
Correct.
was physically more
I
dominant.
believe Nancy was always below her
She
on
was.
the podium
She was.
on all of
And
them.
that's the thing is Nancy
Yeah.
just looked the part. Tanya
Correct.
was the part.
Correct.
And if we had valued her athleticism over her looks, which again she was,
Or just
she's
supported her as,
as a person,
yes.
she wasn't an ugly girl. That was always the thing that surprised me. She was pretty. So Nancy kept, she got better and better. Her and Tanya were both winning titles at the same time alongside each other. One would win, the other one would win, one would win, the other one would win. And it became very clear that they were each other's in America. They were each other's top competition.
Correct.
So, like I said, the attack on Nancy Kerrigan occurred January 6, 1994, just weeks before the Winter Olympics. Nancy was a fighter. You know, I feel like we're kind of, I don't want to come off like we're ragging on Nancy. None of this was Nancy's fault. It's
Correct.
not her fault that she fit the aesthetic. It's not her fault that Tanya felt threatened by her. She was the victim in this.
Correct.
But
I think they're both victims. I just think they're victims of two different things.
And I agree. So now it's mid-December, okay? And I'm going to go on record as saying that I think that Jeff Gillooly and his friend Sean Eckhart, who we'll talk about as we move on, are arguably two of the most incompetent criminals to ever commit a crime.
Oh, yeah.
They bumbled and clunked their way through the entire crime. They were unable to locate where Nancy would be multiple times, and both actively discussed their involvement after the crime. Sean would tell people he worked undercover for the CIA as an operative, and he said outside the wrong rink allegedly, he sat outside the wrong rink allegedly scouting a location for the entire day, and Nancy was not even there.
Yeah.
So in mid-December of 1993, that's when this all kind of started. That's when what was going to eventually go down
The
started
precursor
turning
to
into
it. Yep.
Yes. So Tanya finished discouraging fourth in the world skating competition in Japan, which it's outrageous to think that fourth place in the world was disappointing. But
it doesn't get you to where you want to be.
You needed to be in the top two to qualify, and she
Yep.
was not. So unfortunately, with the championships in Detroit approaching, she was seeing her, chances of going to the Olympics, and she was really mad, and she was blaming Kerrigan. She was blaming the judges. She was blaming them because she felt like they were not, they were being unfair to her. So when she went home to Portland, where her ex-husband, because she did get divorced, but she stayed with Jeff, and he was her manager in the most weird, toxic situation ever. And she told him that she was just like super frustrated. And Gillooly told his friend Sean Eckhart, who was working as Harding's bodyguard, what was going on. To which Sean Eckhart had the brilliant idea, what if Nancy were to receive some type of threat? And Jeff was like, what kind of threat? Like, scare her so she wouldn't come back. Maybe she was too scared to skate. And then she would drop out of the competition, and, Tanya could be the star like she should be. And Jeff thought this was a brilliant idea, and he's like, we have to tell Tanya, though, because if we're, sending threats to the skaters, she might get scared and not want to skate, too. And so they told Tanya. This is according to Jeff and
right.
Sean.
So take it with,
So they implicate her all the way through. And then there's some things that Tanya does that implicates herself, because all the way up until this present date, she says that she did not have any part in the planning or execution of this
or
crime.
knowing about it.
She knew about it after the fact. So she admits to that. She admits she knew.
Said that she only knew afterwards.
Only after the
but
fact.
I think that she was
some of
kind
the
of hiding a
evidence
little bit
shows
more.
that maybe she did know more than what she said. So they told Tanya allegedly, and she said it was a good idea, but she didn't think that Eklund was smart enough to carry it out. Was basically the vibe.
I think he had a few screws missing in that
I
brain.
think that she was right, because he wasn't smart enough to carry it. I mean, he did it, kind of.
Correct. I think he missed the mark, like literally.
He did. Well, he didn't. He hired someone because he didn't actually do it himself. So the week of December 18th, 1993, Harding made plans to travel to the Nationals, and she had gotten a $10,000 donation from, of all people, George Steinbrenner.
That just floors me.
So he was funding her trip as he was her sponsor. So so Gillooly then was worried that there was not going to be enough money left to pay for all of Tanya's stuff that she needed all of her expenses, because he was supposed to pay Eckhart $4,500 for the Kerrigan job. Now, the amount of money that goes for this fluctuates up and down, up and down, up and down.
It's so crazy.
It's $4,500, then it's $2,000, then it's $3,000, then it's $65,000. It's just outrageous.
I think, doesn't it go up though because of the extent of the
they go
crime?
from like threat to attack to kidnapping to murder.
kill her, yeah.
This plot was absolutely wrought with stupidity and inconsistency.
I
and
think the
poor
longer
planning.
they like thought about it and like
Yeah.
were like trying to figure out what to do, it just manifested into like
Outrageous
crazy.
craziness. Yeah. So on December 24th, so Christmas Eve, 93, Galooly gets a ton of phone calls from a man identifying himself as Derek, who wants to talk about a business proposal involving Sean Eckhart. So now Galooly's freaking out. He's like calling Sean. He's like, why are you telling people what we're doing? Like, there's too many people involved. I don't want to do this anymore. We're going to get caught. And Eckhart is like, no, this guy's solid. He's going to help us. He's a guy who gets stuff done. So Galooly,
But did he?
He kind of.
I mean, sort of.
A little bit.
But he got caught.
Yeah, well, everybody got caught. So on the day after Christmas now, so 2 days later, assured by Eckhart that Derek is going to be like a good middleman and get them the real bad guys that are going to do this for them, he agrees to meet Derek and hear him out. And they decide that the job will cost $2,000.
Only $2,000.
Only $2,000 to attack.
What are we? Oh, just to attack her or scare
It
her?
went from scare her. It was at scare her at this point.
Okay.
So $2,000.
Scare her for $2,000.
Scare her for $2,000. So Vera Morano, who's another skater, and she's a writer in Pennsylvania. Sorry, not a skater. She is a writer for a skating writer, sports writer for figure skating.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. She gets a call from Tanya at this time, saying Merry Christmas, and she needs her to settle a bet for her. Could you tell me, Vera, what does Nancy's training schedule look like? Because I don't think she trains as hard as me. What does her training schedule look like? So I can see if she really trains as hard as I do. To which Vera told her, because she had no reason not to.
Because she had
no
no
reason
idea.
not to. She didn't know what was going on. So on December 27th, so this is the next day, Galooly cashes a check for $3,000. And he told Harding, according to him, that he was going to go meet this Derek guy to settle the deal about attacking Kerrigan, or scaring Kerrigan. On the next day, the 28th, Agnes, who's Eckhart's mother, so now they're involving this poor woman in this, Sean Eckhart's mom. They have the meeting to attack a professional figure skater at this guy's mom's house.
No.
Of all the nonsense. So Derek Smith shows up, and Shane Stant, who is his nephew, he shows up and he's wearing a black hat, a black Australian Outback style coat, and black fingerless gloves. This is how he shows up to this meeting. This woman, I can't even imagine what Sean Eckhart's mom's thinking. Like, all of these weird looking men show up to her house. One of them's like dressed like Crocodile Dundee, but like goth. And there's she's just like,
Why
okay,
are
come into
your
my
fingers
house.
out
I
of
don't
the
know.
gloves?
Like, what is the point of gloves without fingers?
What is the point?
So they have this.
Is it, wait, is
I'm
he
sorry, you're really thrown off by the glove.
I know. I am really thrown off by this glove thing. Because if you're coming for like a job interview and that's what you're looking like.
He looked tough.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're not stopping
he
your
got the
fingerprints from
full
going
black outfit. I got it. So like maybe she won't see him.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
But the fingers, man, that's
the
good.
fingers are out.
Those
Yeah,
are
they're
out.
like
I
creepy
can't get
fingers.
that.
So now they're sitting here and they're having this meeting and they're talking about what they're gonna do. And they started out as, we're gonna scare her, to let's slice her Achilles tendon so she'll never walk again, or let's kidnap her and take her out. They had all of this stuff. So they finally settled that they were gonna just like break her knees.
Is this the same man that was wearing the fingers?
Yes, all of them, the four of them.
No.
Sean Eckhart, Shane Stant, he's the one who ends up committing the crime.
Right.
Derek Smith, who's the man who gets stuff done, and then Sean Eckhart, the alleged CIA undercover operative, turned security guard, turned
everything.
hitman for hire for figure skating. So Smith promises that if the job isn't done, he and Stant will chip in for their own expenses. Like, they want you to pay. If they don't do a good job, they'll pay for their own self to get out there and everything. And when Galooly allegedly told Harding this, she laughed and said, "Oh, they have a money-back guarantee."
That's so bad.
It's so terrible.
But it's so true.
I know.
Because I mean, they at this point they had enough money to cover any level of crime that they wanted to commit.
They had the $10,000.
They were ready.
Yeah. So Galuli starts making the plans. They're going to go to Boston. They decide that the best place to get her would be at her training camp. So they're following her around through December. Like through these months of December and into January, trying to find her. And they're constantly going to the wrong place. They literally travel all up and down the East Coast trying to catch her at her thing. They had spent an entire day outside of an ice skating rink, going back and forth, moving their car, like trying not to look suspicious, even though they were looking the most suspicious ever. All the ice skating rink, and they're like, yeah, she's not here.
Of course she's not.
They went all day sitting out there moving around waiting for her to come out. She wasn't even there. They're so incompetent. Now they're running out of money. They're putting things on their credit cards, which is now making a paper trail of where they've been and that they've been stalking her.
So we're the level of intensity for this crime is boiling at this point.
It is. And Jeff and Tanya, according to Jeff, are out of the loop. They're like, these guys are not contacting them. They're not reaching out. They have no idea what's going on. And so Jeff is like saying he's out of the loop. He's freaking out. And Eckhart's saying they need more money. And Galuli's like, this is stupid. Like, this is ridiculous. And according to Galuli, Tanya's like, if they don't do this and get it done, I want my $2,000 back. Like, we can use that for.
So we settled on $2,000 for this.
Allegedly,
all of this. Okay.
Back and forth, $2,000.
Right.
But now go all the way to January 4th. They have been following this woman around, trying to attack her for like a week.
Yeah.
A week now. And they have not succeeded. In Portland, Eric Eckhart calls a guy named Rusty Ritz and asks him if he would be willing to kill somebody or break their legs. And he was thinking, and he said $65,000, and it was a job in Detroit. Now I don't know how you would go from $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,500 all the way up to $65,000, and it's to kill someone.
But how do you ask somebody for either to end somebody
Unalive
or
someone's life, yeah.
just break their legs? Just break their
One
legs.
of those two things. Like there's a vast difference in between
you can
them.
make your own decision in between, I guess.
Like,
and is it like a sliding scale?
I mean, if you want to like break her legs and her pinky finger,
I
just,
guess
like,
that's
I'm
gonna
not
make
sure.
you like a couple thousand extra.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll add an extra $100 if you break her pinky too. So Ritz dismisses this as just talk. He's like, this is nothing. I don't like, this guy's crazy. So on January 6th, 1994, a man with a black metal baton clubs Nancy Kerrigan just above the right knee. Now, again, they talked about breaking her knee. This man could not even hit her in the knee. He hit her in the upper thigh, mid-thigh. It didn't break any bones, but she got a severe, like, bone bruise.
I think she pulled herself out of that next competition, too, because she couldn't do it.
She couldn't. She got a pass. She was supposed to qualify. And because of this, she ended up not having to go to the qualifying, and she just automatically got a qualify. So they really did themselves a disservice by this, because she didn't even have to compete to get in. And now this was at the Cabo Arena during the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. The attacker breaks through a glass door. And when I say breaks through a glass door, he didn't just ninja style through this glass door. He put his head down
like a stupid
and
ram.
used his head and rammed his way through the glass doors to get out.
It's plexiglass, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So later that day, Ritz, the guy that Eckert had called, was like, hey, did you see what happened to Nancy Kerrigan in Detroit? And he was like, yeah, she got it. So you remember the meeting that they had in Sean Eckert's mom's basement?
Yeah.
They recorded that.
Oh, because they're dumb.
Yeah, so they recorded that, and Sean Eckert was playing it for people, to show off, what a bad,
Why
a badass
do murderers or people like that like to boast about crimes that they're
going to do?
Back
then, too, now everybody puts everything out.
Correct.
But back then, this was not, a thing. People didn't just, record themselves, talking about crimes. So he played it for people, and one of the people that he played it for was a woman, and she called the police in Detroit and was like, hey, I saw a video of Sean Eckert, Jeff Galuli, Derek Smith, and Shane Shant saying that they were gonna kill Nancy Kerrigan, basically. So obviously the police are like, this makes sense. So Harding, so that's on the 7th. On the 8th, Harding wins U.S. figure skating title. and a place on the Olympic team. Kerrigan is unable to compete because of the injury, but the skating officials give her the other spot on the team anyways, like we talked about. So that was on the 8th. Now the 11th, Metro Detroit resident finds a black baton believed to be the weapon used in the attack. And he turns it over to the police, and it's given to the FBI for fingerprinting. Now I wonder if he was wearing his fingerless gloves.
So stupid.
On January 12th, the Portland Oregonian newspaper reveals that Eckert played the tape of the discussion to injure Kerrigan to a Portland minister, Eugene Saunders. So another person that he has played this videotape for. And Saunders goes to a private investigator and to the FBI and was like, hey, I saw this. Law enforcement authorities reveal that Eckert has confessed. So he finally confesses on the 12th, and he implicated Gillooly and 2 others. Gillooly denied everything. He was like, I didn't do this. On January 13th, Eckert and Derek Smith are arrested, and they're charged with conspiracy. Smith is suspected of driving the getaway car. And now they're searching everybody's houses for stuff and, whatever. So on January 14th, Stant surrenders to the FBI in Phoenix. In Detroit, law enforcement officials reveal that Harding herself is under investigation now. So what ends up happening is Nancy, comes back. They all end up skating. Tanya, because this is ongoing.
Tanya gets first place, correct?
No. Oksana Bayul gets first place.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
Nancy
right.
gets second.
That's right.
And Tanya gets third. Tanya wasn't even supposed to skate because they were currently under investigation because she hadn't been found guilty of a crime at the time of the event.
That's so crazy. I remember reading about that too.
She sued them.
Right, and that suing process or whatever
they just were like, fine, we'll let
right.
you go. So I bought cards. I have a Topps card from 2011 of them crossing paths on the ice during practice at the Olympics.
Yeah.
They had to skate together. This is one of they said that it sounded like a bomb went off in the stadium because everybody was like click, 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 taking this picture as they crossed paths on the ice. So.
And didn't Nancy wear the leotard
that she was
wore
attacked when she got attacked? Yes.
And when she was asked about it, they asked her if she did it as just kind of like a situation, and she's like,
Basically. Yep. Nancy was bitter. She still has never forgiven Tanya. She said she will never forgive Tanya. She does not care. And, she shouldn't. Nancy became more likable to me the more, real she was. They caught her on hot mics after all of this. But, for a while she was like, oh, everybody felt so bad for her. And then they caught her on a hot mic, kind of talking a little smack about Oksana Bayul. And then they caught her talking some smack about Mickey Mouse, and people got a little mad at her. But I was just like, she's a real person.
Right.
And we constantly, it goes back to that where they just did not treat these women like real people.
I think people forget that they're real people, though, too.
So they had plenty of evidence, and eventually Tanya admitted to knowing about the stuff, but she says she didn't know about it until after the event, and she refused to admit anything beyond that. Sean Eckert was pleaded guilty, and he ended up going to jail for 18 months for racketeering.
Yep.
Shane Stant also got convicted of racketeering, and he went to jail for 18 months. Derek Smith was accomplice in the getaway driver. He ended up getting probation. Jeff Gillooly did 2 years for racketeering. Tanya Harding's legacy in figure skating is undeniably mixed, and while she was an immensely talented athlete who achieved impressive feats on the ice, her association with the Kerrigan incident definitely overshadowed that. She, got banned from skating for the rest of her life. She was never allowed to skate again.
And wasn't she ripped of her title?
She pleaded guilty to hindering the prosecution.
Oh, yeah.
And then she received 3 years probation, community service, and a fine. 500 hours of community service and a fine. And in addition, she was banned from the U.S. Figure Skating Association and stripped of her 1994 title.
And that, I don't know if you know this, but even today, that title is still blank.
Yeah.
They never replaced it with the second place person or, changed it. When they ripped the title, they ripped the title.
She was
and
just done.
It's blank.
As if nobody won that year.
Nope.
It was invisible. So these people are a mess.
To say the least.
Tanya has battled a lot of battles since then. Her life has become the subject of documentaries, podcasts,
No way.
books, films that explored the complexities of her upbringing, her role in the attack. And despite her immense talent as a skater, her legacy will forever be associated with the controversy surrounding Nancy. And the other thing is like she was abused even after this because Jeff released personal videos of their wedding night
Right.
without her consent.
Right.
And she couldn't get them to stop because they have laws against that now, but back in the 90s
Correct.
they didn't.
Correct.
And so she ended up signing off just so she could make some money off of those tapes because she couldn't skate. She had no like discernible skills anymore.
And didn't you say that you had done a Google search or whatever of like what she's worth nowadays,
It's like 500,000 only.
and like what Nancy's worth, which is
Like
like a couple
millions,
million.
yeah.
And it's just crazy, like what Tanya could have been if she was given the resources that she could have used at a
Yeah.
younger age.
Yep. So after all of this, Nancy also stepped back from the spotlight. She became a mother. She has 3 kids, and she has really prioritized her role as wife and mother. In the years following, Kerrigan made appearances and stuff like that, but she really has led a very private life. Her family, again, we talk about like perception versus reality. Her brother was arrested in in January of 2010 because him and his father had a dispute, and it led to a physical altercation where Mark choked Daniel. And during the incident, Daniel ended up going to cardiac arrest and dying. So despite efforts, they tried to resuscitate him. He died. So he ended up going to jail. He was charged with assault and severe body assault and battery causing serious bodily injury, and was held on bail. It was crazy. He went to jail for only 2.5 years for killing his dad.
That's crazy.
So I think it like that added to a lot of like Nancy's already like difficult past. I don't know. It's just crazy. So I wanted to like the one last thing, like where everyone kind of is. Tanya is like living her best life now. She's just like out.
Yeah, she lives up in Washougal, Washington, and last I saw she was a welder.
Yeah.
She's always
She
been
did
a trade.
boxing. She did a lot of celebrity like appearances
Yep.
on like Dancing with the Stars.
She was on Worst Cook
Worst Cook
of America or something.
Was she on Celebrity Apprentice too?
I don't know. I can't remember. I
She's
know
been
she
on,
was
like,
on Dancing with the Stars. And
Yeah, she did like a whole stint of reality TV.
And I think, when you and I talked about the Dancing with the Stars thing, I think we kind of thought that was an opportunity for people to see her soft
and
side.
maybe give her a little support.
Because wasn't it
Once they,
like Sarah Layton was saying, like it was right after?
Yeah, I think people realized that like maybe they had been really horrible to her.
Yep.
Even though what she did was horrible.
Correct.
So, Jeff Gillooly, after he got out of jail, he changed his name to Jeff Stone. In 95, he married a woman named Nancy Sharkey, and they had 2 kids. Unfortunately, Sharkey ended up taking her own life, and Jeff remarried again, a woman named Christy Novazio.
We need to find this woman.
I know. They got married in 2012. The last thing that I heard about Jeff, the most recent quote I found of him was him saying, "The most common question I'm ever asked if it comes up, do you regret what you did?" I guess it's kind of a yes and no question. Yes, it was pretty darn stupid. It was pretty ridiculous. But in the same instance, I'm a big believer in how you lay out your life and how each step you take, each opportunity you use, whether for good or bad, kind of leads you down the road. I'm real happy with my life. I'm real happy with the way it turned out. I've got 2 beautiful kids with my ex-wife, and I've got a lot of good friends. What's there to regret? Not much. Like, how about attacking a woman for no reason and destroying like at least 6 people's lives?
I mean, I think we also talked about this too. Is kind of like he had nothing against him. Like at the end of the day, he walked away, and his legacy. He had no
married, changed his
legacy.
name,
He was married to a legacy.
Yeah.
He was with the legacy.
This
he
has
destroyed
followed
it.
her.
Correct.
And he spread tapes of her.
I know.
He just and now to be so flippant, like not only that, he attacked a woman.
Yep.
Like I don't regret assaulting a woman. I don't regret it. What an absolute piece of trash, garbage person. He is a piece of garbage. Jeff Gillooly, Stone, whatever you want to call yourself, if you're watching
He probably
this, I think
changed his name
you're a
again
terrible
for the 4th
person.
time.
Similarly, Sean Eckert, who played the role in planning the attack, has mostly stayed out of the spotlight. After he got out of jail, he also changed his name to Brian Sean Griffith. He died at the age of 40 in 2007. He had done a computer business, but that didn't last for very long. And he was also arrested again and sentenced to 3 years probation for assault in 2001. So obviously it also did not learn his lesson.
Jeez.
The hitman Stant, the guy who actually did the crime, he found Jesus. And, you know, he said he knows it sounds really cliche-ish, but it really changed me. And I had an opportunity when I was in prison to sit and go, man, what kind of person do you want to be?
Was that finger
what kind
guy?
of? He was the guy who ran his head through the wall.
Oh. Maybe that's how he found him.
So he wanted to be a better person. So I can respect that.
I can respect it too.
He was also like the very youngest of this whole group of people. And Derek Smith, nobody knows what really happened to him. He moved up to like Montana, and nobody knows.
Which I find really
He's
interesting.
like out
Once
there in
again,
the wilds of Montana. So that is the wild and crazy case of Tanya Harding.
I really think that, you know, just finish it off real quick, but I think that both sides were victims. I think that, you know, she was Nancy was a victim of the attack from Tanya, but I think Tanya was a victim in her home.
She was a victim of her whole life.
Correct.
She remains a
And I
victim.
think that, you know, like we had mentioned before, like it was, if she had the opportunity to have a different life and be in a different family, you know, with all the resources nowadays, you know, this doesn't happen in public without somebody saying something nowadays. And so
no.
maybe she wouldn't have met
The
the
stuff
Jeff.
that Lavona did alone in public at the ice rink, where for everyone to see, would have been enough
Correct.
for someone to step in.
And I think that her having a voice would have helped her. I think there's a lot of things that could have helped prevent this in the long run. And I think nobody taught her how to be competitive.
Our society like failed Tanya and created Tanya. So it is what it is. So
And a different era.
I don't know. Well, I appreciate you guys all for sticking through this.
Yes, thank
I know
you.
it's like different than the sports card content you're used to. We do have a couple Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding cards if you guys want to check them out. They're pretty cool. And until next time, be safe and make good choices. Don't make the choices that Tanya Harding made.
Yeah.
Definitely don't do that.
Don't do that.
That's bad.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.